Okay,
I'm recording on my end.
it's recording now, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to our weekly meeting, MELS 601. I know it's been a tough week for some of you. I know that, and a tough weekend, but we didn't tell you that it was going to be easy, did we, Dr. Lamb?
No.
We said that there would be a lot to do, and this week was, you know, it's kind of like going into sixth grade, and when you first get there, the first 2 weeks, you'll say, oh, this math is easy. But you're doing all review because it was fifth grade math. And then after about 2 weeks, then is where the rubber meets the road. And that's kind of where we are, where the rubber meets the road. And, you know, it's to be expected. So what our plans are this evening is to, and I want you to listen. I want you to put that thinking cap back on that I talked about a few weeks ago. And don't worry about asking questions, because if you think about asking questions right now, then you won't hear what we've got to say. And I think a lot of your questions will be resolved if you'll just listen. Several of you have already submitted task 3 very successfully, but then some of you are kind of not where you need to be with it. So our purpose tonight is to try to help you get where you need to be. Those that have submitted or are ready to submit, you can always go back and you can, until it goes to task stream, you can make adjustments and change anything and resubmit if you want to. Even if I've told you it's good, you may think of something else that you want to add to it or make a change in it. So you can always go back and resubmit, and we'll look at it again. So, and then we're going to go into task 4 and tell you how to get there, because some of you are already there, and then that is something that I have to look at by the weekend as well. So with that in mind, I want us to think back. Let's go back to task 2. Now, if I don't have task 2, that means you're behind. And I can count on one hand some of you that have not submitted task 2. You know who you are, and get it to me. We've talked about it. I've talked with you about it. So, you know, do what you've got to do. But I want us to look back at task 2. In task 2, you had to identify the most pressing need. Now, I want you to think about this like at this point, you've identified a need. You know that there's a problem there. You've said, this is the problem that I want to address. So from this point on, now remember, you're talking about the student learning, student achievement. From this point on, I want you to think about that problem and what are you going to do about the problem. From this point on, we're trying to put procedures and plans in place to deal with that identified problem. And I kind of look at it like, you know, I've gone to the doctor. The doctor says, okay, this is what's wrong with you. Okay, I know what's wrong with me. Okay, but if I just knowing it's not enough. So we're going to go to task 3. And I want you to think about that as having gone to the doctor, and the doctor said there's a problem. You've got a problem in your school. You've identified the problem in your school. One problem. In task 3, you're going on that one problem that you've identified. And in prompt 1, you're going to do, first of all, you're going to do a literature review, a narrative. And folks, a narrative and a literature review is not 3 or 4 sentences. You've got to give it some thought, and I'm not saying write a book or write a thesis, but put enough thought into it. You've got to do a narrative that reflects back on that identified problem. What does the research have to say? Okay, there's a problem there. The doctor tells me that I've got a problem, but and I may have to have surgery, but before he does surgery on me, I want him to know what's out there so that he knows all the best practices, the best procedures, the best medicine, everything that he can about my identified problem. I want him to be able to use all that, to look at it, give me medicine before he cuts on me, if it'll work, So you're looking what is out there, what is the best research out there. So you're basically doing just a mini research narratives on what your identified problem is. That's the first thing you do. Introducing task 3. Everything that you do should be focused around your identified problem. You're not all over the place. You already have said, this is what I want, this is what my school's got to work with. So in prompt 1, it said, Dr. Lamb, if you'll go to prompt 1 in task 3, it says candidates will create an annotated bibliography that is featured in the narrative to evidence. Okay, that's featured in the narrative. That means that your annotated bibliography is akin to the narrative. You're going to refer to the annotations that you do are going to be a part of, or should be a part of the research that you have in your narrative to begin with. They're akin to each other. You're going to mention it up in your narrative, but then you're going to annotate it when you put those minimum of 9 annotations together that we're going to talk about in just a second. Okay, so you're going to feature your annotations in your narrative, and to evidence and illustrate, they're going to be proof. Resources for best practices in the identified need area, including a section that features online tools to support the teacher and student. So let's go back again. You're going to do a narrative. The narrative is going to be a mini literature review. In that narrative, you should have references, APA references in there. When you get through with that, then you're going to go to your annotated bibliography. Now, this is where some of you are getting confused, I think, so I want you to listen. Your annotated bibliography, Dr. Lamb and I said clearly last week that you will have we said 5 or 6, I'm saying 6 regular sources. Now, those sources can be from journals. It can be an article that you found online. It can be a book or whatever. But whatever you've talked about in your narrative, those should become your annotations down there because they're akin to each other. Does that make sense? So if you used, I'm going to use him, if you used DeFore up in your narrative, then DeFore, whatever you were looking at to get your information in your, can be one of your annotations, your regular annotations. It doesn't have to be something separate and apart. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be one and the same. If you used it up there, you can use it down here. But what you're going to do down here in your annotation is you're going to give just a summary of what that reference is about that you've used up there. Now you're going to do 6 of them, 6 regular. And then you've got to do 3 online resources as well. Now those online resources could be programs that you have talked about in your narrative. It could be, some people have taught, it may be about Study Island. You may have referred to Study Island up in your narrative, or it could have any technology-based, research-based program that you have used up there. All you're doing down at the bottom is, in addition to your 6 regular annotations, you are doing 3 online annotations as well. And those online annotations are they must be research-based, and they're more than likely going to refer to a program that possibly could be a fix for the problem that you've identified in task 2. Does that make sense? Again, you begin with your narrative, and your narrative is going to be a literature review. You're going to do APA referencing in there, which means that you're going to have a reference section at the end if you do that. And then the references that you use in your narrative should be a part of your annotations. 6 regular annotations, and then 3 online references. And the online references more than likely are going to refer to programs, and they should be research-based programs. And you're going to do those 9 annotations at a minimum, 9, based on APA. That is prompt 1. Dr. Lamb, have I left anything out about prompt 1?
Nope.
Okay. Now we go to prompt 2. I'm going to read it. Candidates will detail how the PLC created and used multiple. What does multiple mean? More than 1 and 2, right? Multiple graphic organizers and such as charts, graphs, tables, timelines, etc., and embed them in the narrative to demonstrate how the PLC projects that the chosen best practice strategy that suggests the use of a technology not already being used might be applicable to the need. Okay, I'm going to go back to what I said to you about going to the doctor. Okay, when you go to the doctor says, okay, I think you got a kidney stone. But you know what? I think I'm going to take some x-rays and I'm going to make sure that you got a kidney. Well, anyway, they take x-rays, they do lab work, whatever. When they get through, they take everything they've got. They take the x-rays that they've done, that is a visual. They take the lab work, those are visuals, and they put it all down there, and they use that information to help diagnose and work with the identified problem. That's what you're doing there. You are going to, and you don't just put charts there. There should be some narrative down there. If you put a chart or a table or anything, you explain what we're looking at. But everything that you do down there should reflect back on what you've done in prompt 1. They should relate. They're kin to each other. And everything in prompt 1 and prompt 2 should refer back to your identified problem in task 2. When you get through with prompt 2, there will be a reference section, or there should be, because you should have done some research in your prompt 1, and there will be there will be appendices. The appendices will also, your appendices will be the charts and tables that you've used, all that information. But in addition to that, you remember, you're not doing this, you're not the Lone Ranger. You're working with a committee. So every time that you get together, there should be an agenda that's explaining, an agenda for your meeting. You should have somebody taking a picture or doing something to prove that you are leading. You know, if nothing else, you've got those 2 items for almost every one of the tasks that you're doing as artifacts to prove that you're leading and you're doing what you're supposed to do. And Dr. Lamb, have I left anything else out about prompt 2?
No.
Okay, that's it, guys. Now, some of you have gone through it and you have smoothed through it, but I hope that this helps you. And I'm going to tell you something else. Now, you can get mad with me if you want to. I don't care. I'm telling you because I do care. Some of you are waiting to the last minute to look at some of this stuff, and it's obvious when you submit it to me. I can tell those that have spent time doing what they need to do, or you've waited to the last minute and you're just, I got to get something in there. I know you cannot do that with much of this work. You've got to set aside some quality time, and you've got to look at this and can't look at it at the last minute. And you're going to get frustrated if you wait and do that, and you're not going to do a good job. So you need, from this point on, you need to allocate time in your schedule. This is what you've signed up for. I want you to allocate time in your schedule to make sure that you give this work the quality time that you're paying for. And at the end of the day, I'm going to ask you this question. If you have a medical need and you go to a doctor, Do you want a doctor that spends quality time learning what they're supposed to learn and doing what they and know what they do, or you want one that just gets by the skin of their teeth and pass with a 70? No, you want the best, don't you? Well, then we need the best that's going back out into our schools and to be leaders. So I expect nothing but quality work from you, and I'm going to push it. I'm going to push it until Dr. Lamb says, I don't need you anymore, and I don't think he's going to tell me that. So I'm going to push you hard because I want good work out of you. Okay? I hope that helps. Dr. Lamb, what you think we should do now? Let them just let it marinate and let them work on it. I don't think we need to answer any questions about that right now.
Yep, just go ahead and go ahead and hit task 4 tonight.
Okay, now I want you to look at task 4. Now, again, remember I told you the work should be seamless. One leads into the other. Okay, when you get to task 4, that's your action plan. Now, I want you to look at what Dr. Lamb has put on the screen, and you have this information. There should be some type of short narrative that leads from task 3 to task 4. Don't just go to task 4 without tying it together. Then when you get to task 4, I want you to look at prompt 1. Candidate will lead. That means you're going to do something, the PLC, not the Lone Ranger, in the research and development of an action plan to strategically address the most pressing need that must include but not limited to the following. Okay, this is what you're going to do. Look at the first thing. It says the importance of the action plan. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to write in dark, bold-faced letters at the top of your page the importance of the action plan, and what is in parentheses? Research-based. Not what Tamara thinks, not what Kelly thinks, not what Colette. I'm just seeing your pictures up at the top. It's what the research says. What does the research say? And you're going to, underneath that, you're going to put your narrative under there. Now look, make sure, I don't want a dissertation, but I want it to be enough that it fully covers what it needs to cover. The importance, why are you doing what you're doing according to research? When you get through with that, guess what? You're going to the next item. Alignment with student learning outcomes. How does everything that you're doing, remember, the APSL is about student learning. So everything you're doing here is about the outcomes of student learning. So you're going to do in dark bold-faced print, you're going to write alignment with student learning outcome. And guess what you're going to write us? A narrative about how it all goes together with student learning. Makes sense, doesn't it? You better shake your head yes. Everybody shake their head yes. Okay, thank you. Then let's go to the next one, number 3. Your objectives. Now, some things you can do immediately. Some things it's going to take a little while, and some things it's going to take a little longer. Okay, when you look at your objectives, what are your short-term objectives? Looking at your identified need, looking at learning outcomes, looking at the research, what are your short-term objectives? Then what are your mid-term objectives? And then what are my long-term objectives? Realistically, what are the things that I can do now, a little bit down the road, and then later down the road to help with my identified need, to help improve student learning? Then you're going to go to number 4. In dark, bold-faced print, you're going to write specific activities aligned with the designated goals and objectives. Specific. Okay, you're going to say, these are the things that I'm going to do to address everything that I've talked about in the above that relates to my identified problem. Once you do that, you're going to go to number 5. In bold-faced print, you're going to write indicators of success with measurement techniques. Okay, how do I know that what I am doing, what I've said I want to do, how do I know whether it's working or not? What kind of indicators am I going to put out there? how am I going to gauge this? When am I going to gauge it? Look at the intervals, the times. You're going to talk about what you're going to do, you and the team are going to do to gauge whether success is happening. And you can't wait until the end. It should go back, looking at those short term, what can I gauge? Midterm, what can I gauge? Long term, what can I gauge? That kind of goes back to like the benchmark testing that we do. After you get through with that, clarification of roles and responsibilities. Okay, who's going to do what? Who's responsible for what? When is it supposed to happen? How is it supposed to happen? You're just going to talk about all of this. You can't just say, well, this is what we're going to do. There's got to be some responsibility tied to all of this. You're the leader. You're going to set the tone for how this is going to be done and who is going to be responsible for it. Remember, you're a leader. You're not supposed to do this all by yourself. You're to lead other people to help get this accomplished. And then finally, formative and summative assessment criteria. What is your formative assessment criteria going to look like? What is your summative assessment criteria going to look like? You talk about it. That's what you do there. Dr. Lamb, I got to have some water. You go on to the next part.
All right, I want to finish up on formative and summative assessment. I want to interject briefly. I hope you folks understand the difference between formative and summative. Now, let me explain and listen to me carefully here. Formative assessment is not you give the kids a test at midterm and then give them a test at final, and that be summative. That's not formative and summative. Summative is you test the kids at the end to see if it works. Formative is you do fidelity checks to make sure that the adults are delivering the program as intended. Let me say that again. A formative assessment is not of the kids, it's of the adults who are implementing the program or the change to make sure that they are implementing with fidelity. So your formative assessment should be about how are we going to see it? Are we going to do walkthroughs in their classroom? I mean, what are we going to do to make sure that teachers are delivering the program as intended? That's formative assessment of an action plan. Summative is you get your test scores. We have folks who don't understand that. The example that I use is I'm old enough when I became, and I was young enough, I'm old enough, and I'm young enough at the time that when I first became an elementary principal, we still use reading adoptions, textbooks. How long ago has that been? That was before big books even came along. Wow. But here's what would happen. The district would adopt a textbook adoption or new reading textbook adoption. We'd roll it down to the book room and we'd put it in the book room. It would sit there all year long. And at the end of the year, the kids would take the California Achievement Test. That's before the state EOGs for elementary. They'd take the California Achievement Test and we'd say, dang, they didn't do any better this year than they did last year. That reading adoption must not work. Well, it was still sitting down there in the book room. We never even went to see if anybody was using it or not. So what we should have been doing was out doing a formative assessment to make sure that teachers are actually using that reading adoption. Sad but true tale of how we used to do business in this state. That's all too common to tell if people will tell the truth. I'm telling the truth on myself because the statute of limitations has run out. They can't get me for it now. But that's exactly what we did 30 years ago. Can't make that up.
And Dr. Lamb, that is all a part, and what he's talking about, the formative assessment is when you get into the APTEL, which you're going to do after the APSL, that's a part of the walkthroughs. You should be seeing these things when you walk into a classroom.
We actually are going to make you do walkthroughs in the next evidence for that very purpose. For the very purpose, and the reason why we require them is to teach you that the difference between formative and summative assessment. You have to do walkthroughs in your next evidence artifact. In your next evidence, the APTEL, we require you to do formative assessment in the forms of using a checklist and going into classrooms to see if people are using best practices, Marzano, because that's the basis of our evaluation system. So get a head start on it now. Understand the difference between the two. All right. Where are we going next, Dr. Stedman?
Go ahead and let them know. This task 4 is 2 parts. It's everything that I told you in prompt number 1. And then, Dr. Lamb, if you will show them their options at the bottom, they can either do the graphic organizer, or they can do the PERT chart, but they've got to do one or the other. And Dr. Lamb's going to explain those two. But all you're doing is taking everything that you've taught in narrative in prompt 1 and putting it into a visual form in prompt 2. Dr. Lamb, if you'll explain the difference between.
All right. Now, I'm an operations person. I love graphic organizers. I do not like PERT charts. But again, it goes back to your personality type. If you are left brain operations like me, you want an action plan that says who's going to do what, where, when, and why, and when we're going to do it. That way we can hold people accountable. We can measure it. We can watch it. We can monitor it. Now, other people, the smart people in this business, the right brain, creative curriculum people, they say it's not that linear, Dale, it's not just straight line linear, that it works in different ways. We can't do this before that. And so it's not always just a straight line linear freight train kind of movement through the business here, especially when we're implementing programs. And they like something that looks more like that, a PERT chart that has lines and arrows going to different boxes that shows the relationships and the collaboration that takes place to get these things done. This makes no sense to me. This looks like somebody's ink pen broke in there and it just ran all over the paper. I have no use. But that's just me. This is what I like, because I want to start with the specific activity. What are we going to do? When are we going to do it? Who's going to do it? I don't want to see staff or teachers there or administrators. I want names. Staff never did a damn thing. Pardon my language. They didn't do anything. If you don't have a person who's responsible for it, it's not going to happen. It's just the way it works in our business.
And Dr. Lamb, let them know, though, that even though that is your preference, either one of them is acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not going to hold it against you if you decide to do a PERT chart because it's not his favorite.
Yeah, we have to put up with a lot of curriculum people in this business. That's our cross to bear. All right, resources needed, that's money and people. Formative assessment, are you going to do walkthroughs? What are you going to do to make sure that the adults are delivering with fidelity? Summative assessment is whatever measure, whatever the assessment is in terms of, is it an integrated test, end of course test? Is it quarterlies? I mean, what is the actual test, the measure that the students are going to take? Your goal and your indicator of success. Now, people have a hard time with this one. Let me explain the difference. I was preparing for my law class tomorrow this afternoon. It's amazing I actually prepare for my classes and do lesson plans. I know that's old school, but I still do that. And so I was watching a video of a teacher this afternoon. I was watching some teacher videos this afternoon in preparation, working on some legal things, mostly adequate supervision and some things. But anyway, I was watching that this afternoon, and the teacher was talking about one of his pet peeves is get kids in at 30%, that are, their level is 30%, and people expect them to make 70% by the, immediately. And the notion here is our goal might be for our kids to be at 70%, but an indicator of success for this year might be a 5% gain from 30 to 35. That would be a reasonable expectation for 1 year, is to move up 5 points. Our goal, we want our goal always to be in sight. We want them to be at 70 or 80 or 85, wherever we need for them to be. But we can't just say that we weren't successful or our program wasn't successful if we didn't make it all up in 1 year. Now, that's a politician's gambit. The people who are not really supporters of public education do this all the time. It drives me crazy. Teachers will be showing growth with a group of kids that started very low, and they'll be making a standard deviation or more. That's 5 points. In state testing, a standard deviation is 5 points. They'll be making 5 points of growth, 5 percentage points of growth every year. And the politicians that want to take the money and give it to their friends and line their own pockets, oh, they're not making any progress. You know, their goal was 70% this year, and they only went to 35. They made 5 points gain. They made a whole standard deviation. That's a very good program. That time and money was well spent. But politicians want to confuse you with the numbers. You need to know your numbers, but you need to understand, especially when you're in charge of teachers. You can't be unrealistic when you give a group of kids to a teacher who are at 40% proficient, and you expect them to be at 85 the next year. That's not going to happen. You know, I get up. You know, I know that there's, you know, hope springs eternal. I get up every morning and run to the mirror, see if my hair's grown back. You know, I still have hope. It's possible. It's just not probable. We work in the world of probabilities here. You know, we're looking for 5% gain, 5 points, 1 standard deviation is what we're looking for here. That's a very successful program. And you have to understand that. Otherwise, people get discouraged. I hate administrators that beat on teachers all the time over the kids that came in the front door. You can't help who you get. I mean, that's what public education is for, to help the great unwashed pursue the American dream. And so you can't help who you get. But what you do with them is what's important. And if you can move them 5 points, my hat's off to you. And so you need to represent that in your action plan. You need to be realistic in your indicator of success. Your goal can be, you know, very lofty, but your indicator of success has to be realistic. So that's how you do a graphic organizer. Now, the best I can tell on a PERT chart is you just put a bunch of squiggly lines and boxes on the paper, and that's pretty much it. But in reality, you can Google PERT chart. In reality, what you're trying to do in a PERT chart is show that the interrelationships between different variables, groups, peoples, events, that it's not just linear. That sometimes the arrows go both ways, and sometimes they go over here and there, and sometimes 2 or 3 things has to happen here before one can happen there. What a PERT chart shows is everything is not linear. Everything is not step 1, step 2, step 3, like a manual on how to put furniture together. It doesn't work that way. In reality, it doesn't work that in a linear fashion like that. And some folks understand those relationships better than others, and they do PERT charts like this to demonstrate those relationships. Whichever you prefer, whichever is best for you, that's the one I want you to do. Don't just do the action plan because it's my favorite. That's the way I think, though. I'm an operations person. I'll get you there on time. We probably won't have any fun along the way, but I'll get you there on time. Sometimes teachers can't. That's a little too abrupt for teachers, especially the more creative of the teachers that we work with. Sometimes an action plan is just too much like a hammer on them. But they need to be able to see the relationship between things to be more comfortable. You know, whichever you're more comfortable with, I can live with. All right.
Dr. Lane, come on down. Come back. Stop right there where it says prompt 2.
Mm-hmm.
Come back. Come on down to prompt where it says prompt 2. Right there. Okay. Notice what it says. There's something else you have to do. It says the candidate will share the action plan with administration and schedule a meeting between the PLC and administrative team to discuss possible implementation. So once this is done, you've got to lead a discussion with your administration. Now this is again, lots of your competencies can be met in this task as you are leading, as you're presenting. I would have somebody you could do a PowerPoint presentation with your administration at this point, and you could embed your PowerPoint presentation in there. I would have somebody filming me, taking a picture. You're going to have an agenda. All of that should happen. But this is, again, an opportunity for you to display your leadership skills. Okay. Okay, Dr. Lamb.
All right, the last thing that you're going to do is task 5. I'm going to go ahead and introduce it tonight. Don't get all bent out of shape about it, but understanding that what you're going to do in task 5 is you're going to reflect on the experience that you've had through the first 4 tasks and how that you have gone about in your own personal development, how you have met the competencies that are represented in the app cell. How have you met the competency of conflict management, visionary? Now there's 8 required, and then you get to pick the 4 that you want to do. But I urge you to come back to this template to see what a write-up looks like that basically says, oh, that's how they met that. That's how they met that competency. So you're going to write these. Now, you need to do a good job of these because you're going to copy and paste these into your competency analysis for your portfolio and task stream, your DRF portfolio. We have a section there called competency analysis. It's not a separate thing. You're simply going to copy and paste these and put them in there, and then you will submit that for an evaluation grade by the end of the semester. So you can't just slough off when you get here and you get the first 4 tasks done. You're like, whew, I'm done. No, spend a little time and write these well, because this semester you have to submit them for a grade in your task stream portfolio as well. It's called competency analysis. All right, shifting gears quickly. Dr. Stedman, do you have anything else for them tonight on evidence artifact?
No, I think I've given them a lot to think about and to work on.
All right, so quickly, Thursday night we're going to talk about task stream, and we're going to talk about the internship shell. I want to cover the internship shell again for you tonight. I see that we still got about 8 minutes left before we hit the 45-minute mark. We want to get out of here in 45 minutes tonight. That was our goal. And so, again, next to your 601 shell in Blackboard, you're going to have a shell that says either MELS Clinical Internship Hamilton or Lamb. Between us, we coach all 4 of your sections. We'll click on mine right quick. Please remember that this is if you get stuck. You should be getting peer reviews. You should be getting instructor feedback. And if that's not happening, or if you get stuck and Dr. Stedman says you need more help, so that you won't get behind, you come to this shell. You come over here for the task for review. Some of you have already put them over here in evaluation Dropbox. That's fine. We're not going to get bent out of shape about that, but you should put them over here in task for review, and we'll give you some feedback. Now, there's been some consternation. You do need 2 peer reviews. And if you're in a group and things are getting tight, if you get a coach review, we'll let you move on with 1 peer review and a coach review. Now you need to do 2 to put in your Dropbox in your class shell for your grade. You're supposed to do 2 of every task, but if something happens and you're odd man out in your group and you don't get but 1 review, drop it in here and I'll review it, or drop it in Dr. Hamilton will review it. We'll get you your second review. You really shouldn't move on until you get two different sets of eyes beyond yours on it. Dr. Stedman will be looking at it, but if we'd like a couple more people, and if you don't get but 1 peer review, drop it in here and I'll review it. I'm pretty quick and I'll get to it. And so, but that's what this is for, is if you're stuck, if you need an extra review, go ahead and use your internship shell to get you another review, to get another set of eyes on it if you're stuck, if you're having problems. Now, I just tell you what to do. And, when you come to the internship shell, if you're having a problem, there is no debate. We're not going to sit down and collaborate and scratch our heads and do any of that stuff. I'm just going to tell you what to do to fix it. And it's going to be up to you to fix it, but I'm going to tell you exactly what you have to do. We don't sit around and ponder too much. We just get it done. I mean, that's the point. When it comes to me, it's time to get it done. So I'm going to tell you, do A, B, and C. And my expectation is you'll do A, B, and C. I will not be obtuse or hard to understand or gray or whatever. I will number them. Do these 3 things. Do them now. Do them this way. We've given you the opportunity to do it on your own. If you didn't do that, that's fine. Now I will tell you what you need to do. So it's pretty direct when you come to this one. We don't just have, you're not going to get from me, go back and read the prompt again and put in the things that you're missing. No, I'm going to tell you, this is what you're missing. Add these 3 things. It goes pretty quick that way. Now, my point in that is it should have already been through review. I'm not going to write your paper for you, but I will tell you what you're missing and what you need to do. Or if you're having trouble figuring it out, I'll tell you exactly I'll read your paper and tell you what you should do based on what you're working on. So don't hesitate to use this if you're stuck or if you need another review. All right. Please make sure that before Thursday night that you have registered your TaskStream account. Go back and find it in your email and register your TaskStream account. You can go ahead and do your School of Ed disposition. It's in your DRF portfolio. I'm going to cover that all Thursday night. If you don't know how, most important thing before Thursday night is to make sure you have registered your account using your Gardner Web username and ID, and you have registered your account for TaskStream. Let's see, we've got 49 people with us tonight, and so that's nearly everybody. I need for you to get your account registered. So I'm going to walk you through on Thursday night, and we're going to submit our SOEs dispositions. If they're not done, we're going to do that Thursday night, and we're going to look at our competency folio and get you to understand that you have to request comments before anybody can look at it. Don't use the share or publish functions. That won't help. You have to use the comments function. We're going to cover that all Thursday night, but you've got to have your account up and running so I can walk you through this stuff again on Thursday night. Dr. Stedman?
That's
7:42.
We've done well. I hope that the directives that you've been given are going to bring some clarity to some of you that just didn't know what to do. Don't harder than what it is. I think if you'll do step by step what we talked about, you will be okay. Those of you that owe me work, you know who you are. Get it to me just as quickly as you can so I can review it. That's it, Dr. Lamb. I'll see you.
All right.
I'll get the.
I'm recording. I'm going to process it, and I'll send you the link, Dr. Stedman.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good night, y'all.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.